You have the floor now that it's official.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair Avard and members of the Senate Energy Committee for allowing me to speak this morning regarding the New Hampton Hatchery Modernization Project. We're very excited about it. So I just want to start off with a little bit of history. So overfishing has been a problem in New Hampshire since the 1800s. And overfishing is basically just that anglers have taken too many of the natural fish, and as a result, we stock new fish in an effort to compensate for those losses. So hatcheries have been around for a long time. Our 6 hatcheries are a variety of ages. 4 are 100 years old, over 100. One is 75 and the other is 53. So a little bit of history. Overfishing, poor water chemistry is another issue that we have. It is the Granite State. We lack calcium. Calcium's really important for the forage base. So bugs use calcium in their exoskeleton, the development of that. And so we have really small bugs. So small forage base equals smaller fish. Anglers like to catch big fish. So again, stocking is really important to get that size that recreationalists are desiring. So stocking will always be a part of our presence here on the landscape. And just to give you a rough idea of what that contributes to the economy, in a study in 2022, anglers spent 3.5 million days fishing. That represented $1.4 billion to New Hampshire's economy.
Is that why there's such low church attendance?
Low church?
Just-
Thanks for keeping it casual. I like that. Could be why. Sundays, nobody's working. So one of the other things, and if you guys just turn pages as I do, I guess that's the best way to go along with the slide presentation, which is a little bit awkward for me. So just bear with me if I all of a sudden jump ahead and turn 2 pages. I apologize. I've done this presentation several times, and it's all right here. So I will do my best to keep you in the alignment. So one of the problems, as I mentioned, the age of our facilities is really old. They're very outdated. The building, the construction of our facilities, we have what are called serial flow-through. So the water starts at the top. It goes all through the raceways and circulars. Raceways are the rectangular tanks, and circulars are the round tanks that you'll see for those folks that have been to the facilities. So the water starts at the top, goes all the way through. There's no room for treatment. There's, if the pipe gets plugged at the top, it blocks the water through the whole facility. And we have experienced problems like that. So the general construction of the facility is not something that we can modify and get and work with it. We basically have to modernize our facilities in their entirety. So one of the other issues is, so the water quality that we are passing through the system, because we can't treat it, what we're finding is that we do have higher levels of phosphorus, which can lead to cyanobacteria blooms. And so one of the goals of this effort with the modernization is to be able to provide that treatment, and we'll get into that a little bit. So one of the other issues, so we have just the discharge from the fish waste and the higher levels of phosphorus. The other issue that leads to phosphorus is fish food. So believe it or not, so when we have the raceways and the circulars, we don't count those individual fish. We do sample counts, and if predation is a problem, it is a problem at several of our facilities. When it becomes an issue, we're feeding that raceway or that pool at a certain level, and that food is not getting eaten because the fish are not all there. They're now gone. And so we basically end up with food at the bottom. That digested food and that wasting food can also lead to high levels of phosphorus in the water. So 2 major things leading to phosphorus, and phosphorus is a major problem for our water quality NPDES permitting. So one of the issues that got us here, and if you turn to the next slide, so Powder Mill and Berlin are both facilities that have what are deemed impaired waters through the Department of Environmental Services, so DES. And the Powder Mill waters are, the whole issue led to a lawsuit that basically gave us the lowest phosphorus limit in the country underneath our NPDES permit. So In an effort to become compliant with that, we have done all sorts of practices to try to reach it. We can't, so what we're going to do is reduce that down to a third. And at that point, we also did a feasibility study that was 1.5 years long to identify what we could do and also what our other facilities looked like. So we're going to drop Powder Mill to a third. We want to keep Powder Mill. We're not just going to close it because the water of Merrimeeting Lake is the water source up above. It's gravity fed. We don't have to worry about pumps. We don't have to worry about any of that. So it's a much cheaper option and it's a great water source. So Berlin, right now we are under review with our permitting with EPA. And so in an effort to reduce some of our issues there, we have York Pond, which is deemed impaired. The West Branch Raceways, we actually closed down. We've moved all the fish out of those. That's the one area that leads into York Pond, and we did that in good faith and hope that NIPT's permitting will not give us a really reduced limit like they did at Powder Mill. So we reduced that, and the fish are now no longer discharging into York Pond. And we're still waiting to hear from EPA on that one. Which brings us to New Hampton. New Hampton was our third largest and makes the most sense for our modernization effort based on the feasibility study, its location, et cetera. We have opportunity to expand in future phases that would enable us to, after further study, potentially discharge into the Pemigewasset River, which would open up a ton of opportunity since right now we discharge into Dickerman Brook. So much smaller source that we're discharging into. So in future phases, we'd be able to expand. The process right now is HDR Engineering is designing a facility that will be 100% new. It will be what's called the recirculating aquaculture system, and that will enable us all sorts of treatment and additional aspects, and we'll be able to double our size in our current footprint. So we're very excited about that. And one more thing at Powder Mill, just to mention, one of the other issues is that we did do the water study, and basically as we are currently producing right now at our level, it would cost us $67.7 million to treat the water source. So obviously not something that we can do. As far as our other facilities, we'll be continuing to look at those. We do have some additional funding from previous efforts, and we'll be looking at predation control, some of those roofs, et cetera, that we at this point have already developed a prioritized list. And so if the funding and when it becomes available, we'll be able to tackle some of those projects. So,
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is your major predator? Is it birds?
What's our major predator?
Yeah.
Or
Everything
bats.
under the sun. We have minks, otters, rats, ducks. So mergansers get in there. So they eat our juveniles. So our hatcheries have various sizes. So basically some facilities start with eggs and then they grow into fingerlings, and then they go out into the outside elements, inside when they're little, but outside when they get bigger. And then at that point, it's really an opportunity for many things. As far as birds, eagles, osprey, you name it, they can come in.
Nashua has a fish hatchery too, doesn't it?
Nashua, yes,
Yeah,
a
and it's
national.
got a dome
Yep.
over it, so there's no predators that can get in there. And
Yeah, so we have multiple facilities that have had those predator controls, and because of the age and the cost, unfortunately, things have been skewing away from hatchery maintenance. And so the reality is that a lot of our predator controls are outdated and broken, and some of them weather related. So as recent as 2 years ago, we had a greenhouse structure at our New Hampton facility. Cost us $41,000, and in one ice storm, 10 minutes wind, boom, done, gone. Wiped out the whole entire thing.
is Nashua's doing all right?
Nashua, I haven't been to Nashua in a long time.
Nashua's a federal act.
It's federal though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, so our 6 are not. So we have an MOU with them to do our salmon, but they are a national facility. They're not.
Is that why it's so up to date and all
Yes.
that? Yeah, it looks. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So to the next slide, so just to give you an idea of the concept, so it will be 3 buildings. I only have 2 here because I wanted to demonstrate how things are going to be. So the upper hatchery building is going to be where the current hatchery building is behind the regional office in New Hampton. And then the other 2 intermediate and grow out buildings will be down below Dickerman Pond. So you can see that star there. So when you Google the map, this site, this lower site, Old B Station and C Station are what you tend to see, but A Station is actually above by the regional office, and that's where the hatchery building will continue to be. So these 2 facilities, and then if you go to the next one, this is a rendition slide that gives you a general idea of what the facility will look like. So the hatchery building itself will be covered and enclosed 100% inside. It will be on a natural spring water source, so there'll be no opportunity for introduction of pathogens and whatnot. There will be treatment as far as the capacity to be able to add oxygen if we need it, or other things, but otherwise it will be enclosed, no predators, much easier, much better system. Then this middle building here just gives you a rendition of what we're calling the intermediate building. So it's a pavilion style enclosed. We've been talking about having knee walls, high knee walls, so that we can hopefully avoid some of those ground predators that have been a problem. And you can also see the 2 buildings here that indicate our recirculating aquaculture systems. So next picture just gives you an idea of what a hatchery building will look like. Very different than what we have now, which is the straight raceways. These are much better. They're in a pod style, so you actually have the opportunity to turn things on and off. If something is a problem, you can bypass that whole pod and move on to the other ones without having the issue that we currently have. So to get into the recirculating aquaculture system, the next slide, this is my really quick, I'm not super artistic, but really quick just rendition of what a recirculating aquaculture system is. It's basically exactly what it says. Water comes into a building. In this particular case, I'm just explaining the intermediate building. That's the middle size class for fish. We basically bring that water in. You have the opportunity to do filtration. So that picture on the left is a big drum filter. These things are huge. So it starts with just your basic filtration. You also have the capacity to treat bacteria and pathogens with ultraviolet. And then you can manipulate temperature to maximize your growth. And you also can degas and insert oxygen if needed. So this opportunity for the recirculating aquaculture system really enables you to maximize your environment within the hatchery to be able to produce the best fish that you can. Again, covered, no predators. So a huge issue as far as introduction from pathogens, et cetera, that they can also bring. It's not just death of the fish, it's also bacteria and whatnot that they can carry. So the water comes in through.
I've got another question for you.
I
You're doing
know,
a great
I'm sorry.
job.
You are doing a great job. When you're introducing oxygen, are you just doing it with a bubbler, essentially blowing air in?
Yes, it's liquid oxygen that's in tanks and then,
okay.
yep, connected to bubblers.
Got it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Or stones, same idea. So these black circles are indicated by the blue circle pods over on the left. So again, just thinking about this system as the opportunity to turn on and off valves if needed, etc. But they're basically aligned in these rows that, again, the water's there, the good water, the solids go down through and go into treatment and into the effluent building, and heavy solids get dropped out into the treatment swale or the sludge. The good surface water actually gets pumped up back through with this yellow line that I have indicated here, and that gets actually pumped back up through, goes through that filtration all over again, and starts the system again. So you actually have very little reuse, heavy reuse, very little new water that you need into the system, so your capacity to treat here is markedly different. What we're designing, what HDR is designing, is a 95% recirculating system. So 95% of our water will be reused, so that enables us the capacity to treat what we need. So now to the big money slide. It's where everybody's eyes go, and so did ours. And so, but one of the key features here that with this project that's different than what we've done in the past is we're taking the advice from Department of Public Works and hiring what's called the construction manager at risk. And so basically by doing that step, that person will be working directly with HDR Engineering, our design firm. And so during the whole design process, they'll be constantly corresponding with this actual person that is on the ground and does this type of stuff for work. So there'll be constant interaction. Our design will be the best that it can be. And it also enables us to link the design with the budget. So we have a much better handle on what those numbers are actually going to be. It enables us to price lock so that we can start purchasing some of these things that are specific to hatchery recirculating aquaculture systems. So these drum filters, the circular raceways, some of the PVC, et cetera, we'll be able to lock those prices in pre-order. And then the other thing that it will enable us to do is avoid supply chain issues. So by the time we're ready to be able to do this construction, we're going to have a lot of those items on hand or already ordered and encumbered, which of course is the ultimate goal for the ARPA money that this project is what enabling us to do this project. So we did acquire $55 million from ARPA funding. If we did not acquire that, we would absolutely not be here today. So super critical. And so, yeah, that enables us to do all that. So yes, big, heavy cost, but at the same time, in the long run, it's going to be a much better effort for water quality, which is, of course, the ultimate goal here. Oh, question?
Well, when you're ready.
Oh, whichever.
Just a couple of questions. Where's the sludge going to go?
The sludge, so right now we do land application with farmers. We have agreement with some farmers to do that. It is a heavy source of basically fertilizer. So a lot of folks use that for that. And then some of our other locations, we have settling ponds that it basically settles out and dries. They're not leaching into streams or anything like that. They're enclosed systems that.
And just about, so, and you test that obviously before you send it out to the farmers.
Yes, so all of our facilities are tested through our NIPDES permitting, so our pollution discharge, and so we test a variety of things, nitrogen, phosphorus, pH, all those sort of things. And then from there, part of that is to make sure, A, that we're compliant, and B, it also enables us to determine for farmers and whatnot.
Yeah, and did you look at solar for this, your energy?
Solar
needs?
is part of our
It
project,
is. I
yes.
just didn't see it here. Great,
Yeah.
thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So the design is ongoing, so that's part of the reason why this is sort of the concept still. So right now, we've been working with HDR for about a solid month and a half, having meetings with them, very intimate meetings with hatchery folks about how we want things to be, what are our options, because of course, something to note here is, like I said, we don't have any facilities like this. So, it's very difficult to sit down in the room and they say, well, what do you guys think? And we go, perfect. And we just stare there like deer in the headlights because we have no idea. And so it's been it's been really great interaction during this process because it is enabling us to determine what we need. And it also is providing us with the information that we can actually do this and that our water quality is going to be so much better. So, and we can produce great fish and simultaneously be discharging better water than what we started with. So much better all around the board. So last slide, just some critical dates. I don't necessarily need to go over them heavily. I will say that we did receive 4 companies that are interested in the construction manager position, and so the construction of the project. So that was good news. And So we'll be working to interview them and site visits, et cetera, and get that person picked and be able to proceed with the timeline and meet our encumbrance deadline of December 2024, and then do the project in 2025 with 100% design and then completion in December 2026.
Well done. Do you need anything from us?
Support?
Like what?
Like, what do you mean?
Like what do you mean?
Well, I'm sure that there's going to be multiple things. I will say that there is going to be a decrease in fish, of course, as we go through this process. Depending on, we're trying to figure out, as the design gets more developed, we can figure out what the phases are going to be. But just so folks do understand, because you may get calls from our constituents, and basically the long and short is that if we can, we're hoping that we can stock fish out in 2025 prior to construction. That might mean a little bit earlier, so fish might be a little bit smaller, but it also might mean that we stock things out way earlier so that fish are not in the raceways during time of demolition and construction. So there will be a period of time where we're definitely at a shortage. And as noted with Powder Mill, obviously that's dropping to a third. So I'm trying to produce additional fish at all of my other 5 facilities so that we can try to compensate that to the best of our capacity. But we still have to maintain our compliance at those other facilities. So it's a work with numbers.
Is Nashua only salmon?
No, Nashua has other trout that they do, and then for us, it's only salmon. For our MOU is only salmon.
Where do they put their trout? I like the fish.
No. I'm trying to. So
Follow the truck.
Are they currently using trout, or are they, I know they're currently doing the brown fish that they fish up in Colbert.
that whitefish, then maybe that's. I haven't been there in a long time. I may be
Peony
misspoken.
species of fish.
Yeah.
They also do some marine species work there as well.
Yeah,
I know Winnisquam has a lot of nice white fish.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a little different cousin, but the same idea.
Interesting. Questions from the committee?
Senator, to get back to
Yeah.
your question, we have $4.6 million allocated to us in the capital budget. We've held it over. Obviously, we're back into the capital budget phase again. As Diane pointed out, we are trying to come up with a list of projects at our other hatcheries. Our plan would be to use capital budget money on that. So that would be a place where we would really appreciate any support as we go forth with that. At this time, I'm not going to say our total request will be 4.6, but we are in the process of trying to come up with a little harder number on that. As Diane pointed out, working with your constituents as we go through construction, there may be a little up and down in our ability to produce. That'd be one thing. The other issue is this hatchery is going to look a lot more like a factory than what New Hampshire residents are traditionally used to looking at. So I think there may be, you folks may receive a few calls over some of that kind of stuff. But in the end, what we're trying to do is to come up with a system that generates quality fish, a large enough volume, and maintains water quality in New Hampshire. And I believe that that's what this project does.
Just curious about the fishing license. Should those, is that an adequate amount to?
Well, there's no doubt about it. As some of you are aware, my background, my first job in college and after college was working with USDA Farmers Home Administration. I was a loan officer. One of the things they taught us, you go out on the farm, you do the annual analysis of the books, but while you're out there, you look around. Is the farmer maintaining his equipment? Is the farmer maintaining their building? Because quite often, when a farmer is under financial stress, maintenance is one of the first things that gets cut. And I would dare say that that is something that's been going on in the fishing game for well over 20 years. And we have not been maintaining our hatcheries to the level that we should have. And I think that as we go forth, we are going to have to come up with a plan on how we're going to be able to pay for an ongoing maintenance project. I know one of the things Diane's worked with, these wells are gravel wells. They need to be cleaned on a regular basis.
That's what we got, 542.
Soil in Milford requires that, because of the different types of metals and whatnot that are in the soils, we have to flush those wells every 2 years. Some other wells we need to be flushing every 5 to 7 years. And we've never had a plan to consistently do that. What we basically did is when the well stopped functioning properly, we rushed in and flushed it. That's not a plan. You know, we need to do these on a timely fashion. So we are starting to move towards that goal.
Great. Senator Pearl.
Is there an opportunity to fill in some of your shortfalls by purchasing fish from other states, other locations?
There may be, most, well, you know, we certainly looked at private hatcheries in New Hampshire. And we don't have a lot of those, and they already have their customers, so yeah, they maybe had a few fish, but, you know, they can't go out and cash flow an expansion that was only
Right.
temporary. Yes, we do need to be talking to other states to see if we can pick up some spare fish as we go forward. We're already working with Maine. I think this is the first year, Diane, that our salmon extends to the state of Maine, because we're having a salmon shortage in some of our lakes. So.
Yeah, we've had a variety of relationships with a variety of our neighbors, including New York. And if we have a shortage, we do absolutely go to other states if they have the capacity to be able to go ahead and give those fish up. Then we definitely take advantage of that. But one of the big things here is that the size that we get those fish at, we usually take them on and then raise them to the size that we want. And part of that is just spacing in the hatchery. So every
Right.
hatchery gets to a point where they have to get rid of fish, either surplus or whatever, at a certain age class. And so that's when we usually would take those fish on. And so now we're talking about not having the space to be able to grow those fish out, which is a very different scenario.
Go ahead.
Well, if you release those fish into the wild, so to speak, at an earlier age,
Correct.
I assume probably the rate the survival rate is probably lower than what you do
Absolutely.
in a controlled environment. So,
Yeah.
I can see.
Smaller the fish, the higher,
Yeah.
higher likelihood of predation.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
So, and potentially the return to the angler. You know, if we're stocking out fingerlings, that's a very different scenario than a 2-year-old. You know, it's,
Right.
so, and those are the types of things that we're trying to
Unless you hold
figure
it
out.
closer to the camera.
Can
It
we
looks a
think-
lot better.
The big finger scenario.
Get someone with smaller hands to hold it.
So I have a dumb question, because I've thought about this over the years. Is there a possibility that you could make moratoriums, like a one-season moratorium on particular lakes, like every 7 years, maybe like one little pond, like Hot Hole or something like that, no fishing? Just to give it a rest so that the population can grow naturally.
So again, the problem is that our environment, right, is an issue to the point where in some locations you have really great water quality, in other locations you don't. And so one of the things that we're doing management-wise is actually going through all of that data and really looking at, you know, what is this water body producing? Are we looking at a management that's for growth? Are we looking at a management that's just a catch and kill opportunity? So what we would call a put and take fishery, and really looking at that and changing the management on a lot of these locations, because the reality is historically a lot of things were just, you know, managed for favoritism. They were stocked because fisheries was much better off. And so we were able to do those types of things. And so a lot of areas got stocked that really probably shouldn't have, and the numbers were stocked really high. And so in some locations where we have fly fishing only rules, we get a lot of catch and release. It's just the nature of the beast. And those fish do not return the year after. And so the environment is not supporting them through the winter or whatever, because the habitat is not there to support them. So depending on which location you put your moratorium on, what determines whether or not is it an area that can withstand it, is it an area that can't. And in a lot of cases in New Hampshire, we just don't have the habitat to survive through the winter.
So angler pressure is only one variable in the solution set.
Yeah. Yeah. In some locations, you have great growth. In the Dead Diamond River, it's our most beautiful wild native brook trout population in New Hampshire. And
Where is that located?
the Dead Diamond, it's gated, so it's limited access, but you can walk in biking. It's the most beautiful place you've ever been, and believe it or not, it's in New Hampshire, and we have brook trout that are this big, and they are 100% natural, genetic population tested, They exist nowhere else.
Is that
And
fly fishing only?
it's not. It's a general reg river. So that's one of those locations that the habitat is beautiful, and we have documented all sorts of spawning and natural conditions just to try to see what we can mimic, elsewhere and try to get that growth somewhere else. And so, but that's a perfect example where that, is fine it's doing its own thing, and it's a general reg river. People can catch and keep 5 fish or 5 pounds. So it depends on the location, but yeah.
Well, keep us posted as how we can help in the future, and we'll talk to people in the capital budget, I guess. Anybody there?
Ines?
I'll add one more thing if I could, and that's just cost-wise. So just to give a scenario of where we're at and where we've been. So when I came on a couple of years ago, our water testing was about $20,000 in the budget. It's now $60,000. So not only did our per test cost increase, but our number of required tests increased. So that was a third fold over, or 3 times. And then the other thing is fish food. So my fish food was a budget of about $200,000. Now it's over $500,000. So very different scenario in today's world of where we're at and what my costs are that I'm dealing with. It's pretty tremendous. So not only do we have the maintenance, but then we have these additional costs that are just killing me, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. Questions from the committee? Well done. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So how do we keep up with these?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Senator Howard Pearl from Loudon, representing District 17, and I am here today to introduce Senate Bill 385. This bill was a request from the Department of Agriculture, specifically the Commissioner, to deal with a situation related to the cost of care fund. And essentially what it allows is for the funds from when a municipality has an issue where they want to apply for cost of care funds. They've done a confiscation, an animal cruelty case or something of that nature. This will allow the department to pay directly to the third party for the care of those animals rather than going through the town budget. It's in some cases that causes some issues with the municipality. So I'm going to let the Commissioner explain more in detail about that situation, but that's basically what the bill does, and it's a kind of a sort of a simple tweak to a bill we put through, was it 4 years ago? I think it was 4 years ago we put the cost of care in, and this will help it to do a better job, which is the original intent of the bill. So with that, I will take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
You did, thank you. Sorry, I missed your call.
That's okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, I am Sean Jasper, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food. And I appreciate Senator Pearl putting this bill in on our behalf. As we began to use the cost of care fund, a problem that no one had anticipated cropped up. That is that towns have set budgets and they cannot expend more than that. And so this is particularly a problem for smaller communities. If they seize animals and they expend the money, which is beyond their budget, even though we reimburse them, that just goes back in as unanticipated revenue and does nothing to actually help in that fiscal year. So that they're still hesitant to do that because they may not have enough money. Some of these cases can be very, very expensive, hence the purpose of this. So this is a way that allows them to essentially contract with a third party, such as a humane society, and then they can bill us, and we would pay the third-party director directly, and it does not impact their budget. The other thing that this does is take the state veterinarian out of the review process. That's sort of, I don't know where that came from to begin with. Obviously, I will still be reviewing it with the state veterinarian, but it's not normal to have somebody other than a commissioner or et cetera actually looking at these things. So it'll still be an internal process, but this language is not normal and not needed. It's best to take it out, in our opinion. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions from the committee?
No, but thank you for, I forgot about that part, the state rep, so thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, Commissioner. And our final speaker on this would be Heather Faria. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. Thanks to Senator Pearl for sponsoring this bill and for the Commissioner for paying attention to these details. I really have not, they did a great job. I've made my testimony quite easy. My name is Heather Faria. I represent the New Hampshire Federation of Humane Organizations, which is New Hampshire's Shelters and Rescues. We often serve as that third party that has been mentioned in the previous testimony. So we actually provide the housing, shelter, and care for animals that are seized during cruelty cases that take as long as 9 to 18 months to be resolved. So anything that helps expedite this process, which has been a tremendous help to us over the past 4 years since the Cost of Care Fund was established in 2019. Obviously, we're extremely thankful and appreciative, so we wanted to come today and offer our support of this bill as well. I can answer questions if there are
Good job.
any.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none? Thank you. We're going to
Thank
close
you.
the hearing on SB 385. Is there a motion to move into exec?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Is there a motion on SB 385?
Move up to pass.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of ought to pass? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none?
Consent.
Second.
All in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none?
I'll take that.
Motion, and Senator Pearl take it out. Anybody want to move out of exec?
Yep.
All in favor of moving out of exec?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we're out of exec. And now we'll hear the prime sponsor from SB 449.
You want to pass these?
Yeah.
And I'll speak to that. Howard, thanks for getting that done. That's good.
Yeah, just, I don't know, Senator Altshuler, did you get a copy of that? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the email with Cameron? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator David Waters, District 4, to introduce Senate Bill 449 relative to the permit issuance timeline for state air permits. This bill was a request of the department to deal with a difficulty that arose out of the passage of the 60-day timeline for response to a permit, and this conflicted with federal statute and also did not give adequate time for public input. So that's why we need the bill, and Mike Fitzgerald is here. We have a letter from him to talk about it further. But do let me note that without time to draft it as an amendment, I've given you an email that has some language that the Attorney General's office felt we needed to revise to make sure we reference the federal statute. So that's what you see here printed. It could be a committee amendment, but it's a pretty simple bill. We need to do it, and I'll let Mike Fitzgerald take it from here.
And where would you put the amendment, Senator? Just,
It's that email,
oh, yeah, okay. all right.
okay? And
Oh, I see it, yeah.
yeah, so it came in, wasn't time to have it drafted, but you'll see it's from the Attorney General with some language there that needed to be added to reference the federal statute. Okay,
Perfect. Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none.
thank you.
All right. Mr. Fitzgerald, please.
Yes, good morning.
Is this Gary with you?
This is Gary with me, yes.
Gary, welcome.
Good morning, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Mike Fitzgerald, I'm the Assistant Director of the Air Division at DES. I unfortunately have a 10 o'clock engagement over in the House, so I will be relatively brief. Gary is in charge of our permitting process at DES, and he'll be able to remain and answer any questions. Hopefully this will be pretty straightforward. Thanks, Senator Waters, for being willing to put this in for us. This was a request of the department. And basically, I would start with a rhetorical question, which is, when was the last time you got a complaint about an air permit time delay? And unless anybody wants to answer, I'll move on. But basically, the issue here is that 541A was revised a couple of years ago. There was certainly some concerns about many state permits and the timeline for them. We don't believe that the air permits were one of those concerns. We processed permits in as timely a fashion as possible, but air permits can be exceedingly complex. There are some that are very minor, relatively easy to process, but the timelines that were imposed by the revision of 541 back a couple of years ago, in some cases are just not tenable and don't allow us to do the appropriate level of engineering review. It can take, you know, hundreds of hours of review back and forth with the applicant, and better understanding what they're applying for, what the type of limits, et cetera. Again, Gary can address this in much greater detail, but the bottom line is that we don't feel that the time limits that were imposed by 541, the revisions to 541 a couple of years ago, would allow us to do the workmanlike job that we expect to do, and would impose on us certainly a burden to almost deny permits, because we would be forced to a point of decision and we don't have enough information, and so therefore we would be forced to make a denial to avoid an automatic permit going into place. And I don't think anybody wants that. Second, there are federal permits, and that's part of the changes that are listed here, that we have two types of permits, state permit system and the federal permit system that EPA has delegated to us. And under that federal permitting system, the Clean Air Act does impose specific timelines for processing of permits, and those are the ones that are referenced here. You see the reference to 40 CFR 70.41. So again, the Attorney General asked us, he called on Friday, having first had a chance to look at this, and suggested that we clarify this. That language that you see there in the amendment is simply a clarification. It doesn't change the substance of the bill whatsoever. Again, we intend to operate as we have been. We push permits through as fast as we possibly can, given the constraints of staffing, et cetera, and resources at certain times. But this bill would give us the ability to do the appropriate job for permitting, can have the appropriate review, and allow the applicant time to get us information, et cetera, and also allow for the applicant to request an extension rather than just stopping the permitting process and having them have to restart over again. So, again, we feel that this is an appropriate solution, and we feel that it's necessary in order for us to do the appropriate job to protect the environment and ensure that the permits that we issue are valid. They're not going to be appealed because they didn't have the proper review. All that sort of issues can come up if we don't have the appropriate amount of time. So again, we're not asking for delay. This bill is intended to simply allow us to continue to operate as we have been for some time. And again, I don't think we never hear from the governor's office. We don't hear complaints about air permit timelines. Then we're generally not dealing with homeowners and shorelines and wetlands and that sort of thing, so on. So these are businesses they know and understand, and we hope that the business community, we've had a lot of discussions with BIA and communicated with them closely on this. The Association of General Contractors has indicated that they do not have an issue, and so we simply request that you move forward with this legislation, and be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Waters with a question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify from our earlier conversation, any concerns that this, because it's 180 days, might mean that things would get delayed until that time?
No.
Or that if somebody might have to restart the clock. This is basically so we can, the purpose here is not to delay, but to conform with the necessity of the process in the federal statute.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kirsten, ambivalent. We need to have that on here on the sheet.
Maybe yes, maybe no. How about that?
Maybe yes, maybe no.
It's a friendly neutral.
Friendly neutral. That's,
See, it's a little closer to the support.
yeah, I noticed that. Yeah,
Closer.
that is true. Yeah.
You can take it that way. So good morning to all the members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kirsten Koch. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy for the Business and Industry Association, known as BIA, Statewide Chamber of Commerce. Today we're taking a neutral position on Senate Bill 449. GES has been incredibly cooperative communicating the need for this change, and we fully recognize that need. And we support this change. We know that there needs to be a more realistic timeline than 60 days for DES to do the job that they need to do. And, you know, like I said, we've had discussions with our members, and they've expressed that they're very content with their air permitting experience with the department, and really just appreciate all the great work that Director Wright and his staff in the Air Division do, especially with communicating with industry through the process. You know how vocal our members are when they oppose something, and they've really had all great things to say about this process, and I think that's really speaks volumes about the great work the department's doing. I do have to note a couple of concerns, particularly just with our small business members. Our larger business members, you know, aren't quite as concerned. But, you know, the bill provides the commissioner 180 days to act, and the current timeline is 60 days. And, you know, for small businesses, especially those who are just starting off, the optics of this drastic change is pretty concerning for them, just because their successful operations hinge on the timely approval of specifically new permits. I will note there's protections already in place for existing permits going through renewals. If there's any delay there, we're not worried about that. Just those small businesses are a little worried about the change, and we've discussed with DES, and I know Senator Waters already mentioned that, you know, 180 being the maximum, not the norm, and you know, why we have full confidence in Director Wright and the current staff to do that. You know, we just concerned about what if something changes in the future. You know, we've long advocated for streamlining and expediting, and just have to note that concern. But if it is the will of the committee to rework that timeline in any way, BIA does have some ideas. We'd gladly work with the department on that. It's important to us that all these changes, if any, would be realistic and workable for the department. And I also want to note that we don't have any objections to the AG's revision, completely understand the need for that. Just wondering possibly if there's some way to have specific tracks where we have smaller permits that can be done in a shorter time frame, or larger permits that can, take more time to complete. Just a thought there, but again, we're happy to further discuss with the department. But ultimately, we do recognize the need for this change and support the need for this change. So appreciate your consideration. Happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Do you have suggestions for the department right now for the smaller permits?
I think we could discuss specifics, but just wondering even if that option with the separate tracks is, a potential.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gary, is there any room for negotiation for the smaller ones? I kind of want to streamline this, but if that's kind of like a brick wall, I'd rather not entertain
Certainly.
it.
Thank you.
My name is Todd Moore. I work for Gary. I'm responsible for all the air permitting in New Hampshire. And we definitely did contemplate different tracks. And part of the issue is we have so many different types of permits. And absolutely, there are types of permits that we should not be taking 180 days to do, and we don't. It's a balance between complexity and flexibility.
So you do have the flexibility to streamline some of these smaller permits, I assume then, right?
Yes.
It's already in the rules?
Yes. Yeah,
So-
we should not be taking 180 days for all of our permits. It's really, the permits that we're talking about are new construction at medium-sized companies. We've got stuff in the works now for Lonza Biologics down on the Seacoast. Hitchner is constantly coming in with things. So those are not the affected sources or the Part 70 sources that are on the federal track. They're not the really small ones that we take less than 180 days. It's the complex ones. So it's an upper bound that we should, that we need in certain situations, expansions of companies or citing new companies. The renewals, the small permits, we can get those in less.
So, seeing how you do have that flexibility, and the concern in the previous testimony was basically about optics. You can kind of put that out there that, hey, we're flexible, we can work with you. You have the ability to do that so that the optics are, hey, we're friendly. We'd love to do business with you, and everything's not going to take 180 days. With that,
Absolutely, we can do that.
Senator Waters with a question.
Thank you, and just to follow up there, so it would be fair to say that the system we have right now in terms of dealing with the simpler permits is working fine in terms of the timelines?
Yes, and in fact, over the years, we've identified certain categories of sources that where we can streamline the permitting, and I have a couple examples. One is we have about 400 facilities that operate diesel emergency engines, generators. The permits are all essentially the same in terms of regulatory requirements and language. So we previously established that under what's called a general state permit. And essentially we go through the permit process and establish this general permit that has all the conditions that apply for emergency engines. And then facilities that have that, instead of going through their own individual permit process that includes us to go out to public notice on each individual permit, offer an opportunity to schedule a public hearing. We greatly streamline that process. And in fact, in recent years, we invested in IT to put that process online, and facilities go through and they renew that permit every 5 years. Something that under a traditional process would normally take several weeks or a couple months to do. Under that system, when we go through the renewal process, most permits are renewed anywhere or issued, and this is a new source installing a new generator as well. We generally get them permitted within a couple days. The only trick there is, the only challenge we really have at this point is more with the online payment systems and security reasons and things like that. But That's one example where we've identified an opportunity to streamline permits and greatly reduce that. And we've also done it for sand and gravel sources that operate rock crushers and move them around the state. We've established an online registration, one-time registration fee, and then if they move their plants around the state, they just go online, they update their location. So if we get a complaint or something about dust or something, we know where that plant is located, we can go out and take a
So
look.
just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, so nothing about this bill would affect your good work to expedite and do it timely?
Right. It's not in statute or in rule, but we do prioritize, always have. I've been there roughly close to 30 years working in air permitting, and that's, I apologize.
You've been doing it for so long, you know how to do it right. I think that's
Yeah,
right.
so we prioritize new construction
Yeah.
or modifications at an existing facility, because that's where companies are actually waiting for that permit to do something. As opposed to a renewal where, as long as they file their renewal application on time, that permit stays in effect until we can take action on it. And that's a kind of a common relief valve in all state permit programs around the country. So in terms of the types of permits where, in particular, it sounds like the concerns are small business related. If somebody, comes in and wants a permit, say for, to put in a new boiler or something like that, unless there's some incredible complexity, we generally, our time frame is to complete the process in 90 to 120 days. And again, that includes a 30-day public notice period. I mean, it's actually longer than 30 days because we have to put it in the newspapers. And as we all know, there are very few daily papers anymore. So sometimes getting a public notice into a local paper to meet that requirement, can take an extra week and a half sometimes to coordinate. So given all of that, given the need to go out and solicit public input on these individual permits, 90 to 120 days seems very reasonable. I'd certainly put that performance up against any of our counterparts in our neighboring states.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions?
Could I make a suggestion? Just listening to the testimony from the BIA.
Sure.
And David, I don't know, Senator Waters, I don't know if this would be reasonable, but could we maybe change this wording slightly to say, for all sources except affected sources within a reasonable period of time not to exceed 180 days? And that might eliminate some of the, it essentially says the same thing.
Well, we'll talk about it in exec session.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that.
I think we have this from the Attorney General's office.
Yeah.
And I think that we have heard that the concern raised by the BAA has been addressed in their conversation before, and I'm just afraid if we pick at it without the Attorney General here, this language works. And I think I hope we've had assurances from these folks that the BIA's, any concerns they have been, have been and will be addressed. And we could revisit this sometime in the future, or the change of regime, as Kirsten said, that could happen in the future, sure, but, we'll look out for businesses in the future too. So I think we're okay, but
I just was trying to respond a little bit to the other testimony, that maybe that semantics back in there, that within the reasonable period of time was still there, but and just gave a deadline, but that's okay.
How concerned is BIA with this?
I mean, I think the separate tracks would be a good solution for small businesses who are concerned about that deadline. I know you guys have expressed that you're able to do it quickly, and, we have confidence in, like I said, the staff that are there now. We're just concerned about parameters for any changes in the future.
Okay. Seeing no further questions?
Okay.
We'll close the hearing.
Thank you.
Yep, and then we'll move into exec. Is there a motion?
So we'll,
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Do you want to work on this one real quick, or do you want to hold on?
I think we're ready to go, but I chaotic here.
Um,
I mean, we heard the answer to the secret, let me just move out, oh, just so we can talk, I'll move out to pass.
Is there a second? I'll second for discussion.
So anyways, I think we heard, you know, the concept of a separate track. We heard from the department as to why that, for small businesses, why that concept is something that can be talked about, but it doesn't, the concept of small business is not really what applies here, because it's the type of permit, whether you're a small business or a big business. And we have regulations for public hearing, and we have federal regulations that says that the 60 days actually would not be legal on some of those. So that's why they're saying we technically have to have the 180 days. There's been, as we heard, no complaints about the process to take care of small businesses to date. They do it expeditiously when it can be, when it's a more complicated project that has to have a 30-day public notice in the hearing, then obviously you're past 60 days. So I'm just not sure whether that concept of a separate track for small business at this point is relevant to the bill. We all like to bend over backwards for small business, and I think they already are. So I'm not sure why this technical correction is a problem.
If I wanted to make it a little bit more feel-good for small businesses, how would I do that with the tracks? Would I add language, to track language, just put in the analysis?
The simplest way to allude to that would be to put in, you know, if within a reasonable time frame not to exceed. But that's not a hard number that somebody can go look at. If you wanted to make it, again, more complex, we could parse out different types of permits and establish.
Yeah, I don't want to make it
It's not the small business, though. That's the thing. It's not about, it's not the category of small business is not necessarily what counts here. It's the category of permit.
I just know I have heard from some of the mining people that are in my districts that grumble about the amount of time it takes to get through these things. And I don't know if it's legitimate or not. You know how business owners
That's our
are
air
sometimes. I don't know if it was air specifically, but the whole permitting process. And just as I look at this, we're taking from within a reasonable time and making it to a set time of 180 days, which to some might not seem like a reasonable time. So that was my thought of just putting within a reasonable time not to exceed 180 days. And that puts a parameter, an end date to it for sure. You know, that was my thought.
Do you think that would, I mean, reasonable is a legal concept that is much vexed. So is it your opinion that legally, if we put that in, it would not upset the apple cart of the Attorney General's language?
I don't think so. I think the Attorney General's language is targeted at
Defining
the
Segment. Okay, well, so then, why don't we put it in? So let's do it, let's do it. If it's not gonna, if it's not gonna conflict with that, then why not do
You
it?
can tease that out in the House if that's the case, but I don't, if it doesn't.
So what would you like to do?
So if it said for all sources except affected.
On which line?
Let's see, let me start here. I had it once and I should have wrote it down. I had it in my head. So line 4, if they act upon a permit application for all sources except affected sources within a reasonable period of time not to exceed 180 days.
Does that sound good to you guys? Okay.
Okay, so now we have the amendment too that we have to
Yeah,
put
we'll
in.
put that in the committee amendment, which is
So
this
line
kind of thing.
5, if after the comma on sources, you put within a reasonable period of time not to exceed 180 days.
And
Can you
then-
repeat that to us, please?
On line 5 after,
Yeah.
within any reasonable time not to exceed 180.
Within a reasonable period, take the struck out language, within a reasonable period of time, and just move that right after the comma, after sources, and then instead of within, not to exceed. Would that make sense, Dave?
Yes, and then we would add from the email, then we would add that sentence,
Phil, you have the email.
and then, so after time period, we'd add that sentence, applications for affected sources shall be subject. Okay?
I think that works.
That's what the Attorney General wanted, and so good.
Further
I will
discussion?
move a committee amendment.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of the committee amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Is there a motion on the bill?
Pass as amended.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the bill as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Consent.
All in favor of consent?
Aye.
Who would like to take this up, Senator Waters?
Yeah. Thank you, Howard, that makes sense. I was anxious about the legal languages, you can tell, but we're good.
All right, all in favor of consent, we have that already, we did that already, so there you go. So let's do 5:45. I'd like, is there a motion on 5:45?
Okay, I haven't seen, I gotta find it. Hold on, let me switch folders here. I got too many going.
Sure, I have that.
Yes.
This is starting a committee.
Say, I need to refresh my memory of what we were doing here.
This was the large animal veterinary center.
Yeah, and so it's basically replace all that says a committee that's gonna look at the issue.
I think that's a good
Yeah.
compromise. Because it is a problem. It should,
Yeah.
it is a problem, but
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't know how you solve it. I don't, and I'm not sure the committee's gonna find a way to solve it either, but I'm not
at
opposed to
least they're
looking
gonna
at it.
try.
So does anybody want to make a motion on the committee amendment?
Well, I'll move Senate Bill 545 ought to pass.
And I'll second.
Then I'll move amendment
09,
0977.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor of the amendment, 0977?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none? You ready for the bill? Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Aye.
Go ahead.
Oh. Where are we?
You said aye?
I'll
Senator
move
Waters?
ought to pass as amended.
Second.
There you go. I think we're there now.
All right, all in favor of the bill as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none?
I'll take it out.
Consent, is there consent?
Consent, yes. Second. I'll second, I think, David.
Okay, all in favor of consent?
Aye.
And Senator Bertzel would love to take this out. All right, so, lucky, all right,
So 594,
Yeah.
Senator Innes sent us an amendment, which would be a replace all. I'm still trying to review that and decide, honestly, I'm not positive it's germane. The amendment he sent, I think I would like to get a 594.
yeah,
I'd like to get a ruling from upstairs.
today's not our deadline for the thing, is it?
If we could hold it, I would like to.
All right.
A little bit.
All right, we'll hold it for another week.
Okay. Very good.
I'd like a little further chance to digest what the amendment's actually saying and make sure that it is germane. Yes, that's all right. Well, I'm trying not to milk it.
Oh, Dan, we're off to the races.
I want to meet the requirements that you put upon.
539? Your motion on 539. This is the dam bill.
Do we have an amendment?
Dam bill.
Still nothing?
No amendment yet. We got a, yeah, okay.
They only have a
you-
couple of weeks.
Follow up on that, because I had some conversations with the ideas that have come out of the hearing, and I talked to the head of the Dam Bureau, and we worked on things, but then he said, well, he was talking with the sponsor, so I just said, well, then, you know what I think about some additions or changes, and he thought they were gonna have it, so maybe you could ask that they get us an amendment, if there is one.
So we're gonna
because
hold on that one.
Yeah.
we-
542.
Yeah, just an update, Mr. Chairman, and let me pass around what I'm working with, and I'll tell you, and
On 542?
542, yes.
Yeah. So, just as a refresher, this arose from the discussions about, we've got to think about funding for the Fish and Game Department. So it's a study committee, and I put the language together for it, and the director would like to be able to take this to the commission, who's next, the Fish and Game Commission, to get their imprimatur. He thinks it all looks good, but that meeting is on the 19th. So his request to us was that he gets to take it to the commission on the 19th and at least have them be able to take a vote on it. And then we could exec it. So,
Do you want to hold on it?
yeah, it seems all ready to go, but just out of courtesy, I think we ought to wait for the commission to have it, to be able to weigh in. But this is, what you see here is they've all, Colonel Jordan and the director and everybody else over there thinks that this incorporates everything we discussed on that. So, including capital budget too, by the way.
Okay.
I put that in there because of, as the fish thing that came up.
Yes, I thought
earlier.
that was great.
This will cover that too.
390, critical habitat.
Yeah, so I don't know, if we could turn to if you wouldn't mind turning to the bill, I'll tell you what my idea is, and then we can see what we want to do.
You got the amendment here?
Yeah,
Every-
but I think,
You all have it?
yeah, if I, just for purpose of discussion, let me move 390 ought to pass.
Second.
So, I tried in a lot of different ways, working with the Farm Bureau and the timberland owners, and the department. The Farm Bureau and the timberland owners came up with language they were happy with, that they felt would work, and then the Fish and Game thought that there were some issues about the language and how that might affect their procedures around conservation land. So I just got to the point of thinking that, try as we might, this became more complicated. I think the basic principle that we've got to start thinking about what we're going to do about habitat lands because of particularly what's happening in North Country with the habitat shift because it's getting so darn warm. I mean, northern New England is the fastest warming place in the country. We're up 6 degrees since 1970s, and it's, we're seeing this. But I just think that this bill wasn't going to make it. What I think still makes sense is to at least the definition that they're using in rules to put it in statute. So if we did just that through line 6 to add that definition.
On the amendment?
On the original bill. Yeah.
My copy doesn't have lines on it, I'm sorry.
On the original bill through line 6.
So what section is line 6? I got the wrong version.
That's section 1.
Section 1, okay.
Yeah, the amendment is, yeah.
Quote, habitat determined to be critical?
Okay.
So that's the definition they're using in the rules.
Yeah, I have the original here.
And now
So
we
you don't
put
have
it in
the line version.
statute. Now, this is not the most important bill facing the New Hampshire State Senate in 2024.
So you just want to
I think
amend it to basically lines 1 through 6?
that's it.
And
That's it.
strike 7.
Everything else goes, it just,
So I've had concerns, discussion with Farm Bureau, with timberland owners, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Fish and Game yet, but I do understand there are concerns. I guess, I don't know for sure I'm comfortable moving this yet without getting all the players on board.
why don't we,
I'll hold it another
do
week.
what you want?
We'll hold it another week.
No, why don't we just, I will draw my motion, and if you want to give it a quiet death and interim study it, or you want to ITL it, either way, it's going to be, I'm going to be happy with.
You want to study?
I am fine with interim study on this, I really am. I think you
I'll
have an
second
idea.
interim
I just
study.
can't get everybody on board, and that becomes problematic.
Yeah.
I'll second.
So there's a motion to interim study, seconded by Senator Bertzel. All in favor of interim study?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none.
Consent?
Second.
All in favor of consent?
Aye.
All right,
Who would like to take it out? Senator Waters.
Sorry.
thank you.
I think that's going to be it for today, because I know, Senator Bertzel, you want me to hold that other bill?
Yeah, do you want me to
Say why?
talk a little bit about my concerns?
Yes. Yeah, sure. You just mentioned the bill number.
Senate Bill 543. Yeah, 543, establishing an environmental adaptation, resilience, and innovation council. There's a number of things. One, I think it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The section that concerns me the most is the funding piece of it. actually two pieces. It allows the council, well, first of all, it imposes regulatory requirements and bypassing the legislative process, I think.
How's that?
Basically, it says, the history of these types of bodies is that they become empowered to make recommended changes, and those recommendations are then adopted by state agencies, and then the legislative process is completely thrown out. But that's not really the piece that.
I'm having a little trouble with my ears here. Where is it in the bill?
It's just the history of these types of councils.
Oh, okay.
So, but that's not the thing that concerns me. Is it section 7?
In the funding part?
Yeah.
Council shows.
Okay. And I guess in the amendment, it's section 8. The council and its working group established in paragraph 5 may solicit and receive financial support, including funding from state government agencies, which is fine, nonprofit organizations, federal grants, foundations, and other entities. That other entities really makes me nervous, because for instance, if this, and in some areas this was talking about transportation and roads, would we look at, let's say, the Belt and Roads Initiative from China?
Yeah, really.
So I think it's way too open-ended, and I think it needs to be tightened
Yeah,
up.
Anything of that, I use some kind of, it's kind of template language for other funds we set up.
Right.
So that, it's like when we did the coastal fund a couple years ago, kind of similar, but I can gladly strike out the other entities or really kind of trim that any way you want. I just wanted to be open that federal grants and some of the nonprofits want to get grants, that's all.
I think the nonprofits also need to be, we need to make sure that they're not, they don't have, I'm losing my verbiage,
At least you're concerned you don't want
a
this.
conflict of interest.
Yeah, you don't want this to become a political.
Yeah, I don't want us to
Yeah,
become.
I hear you, I do.
And the other thing that I have in section, and I think this is fixable, but in section, and this is the amendment. Jeez, section 5L, where it says make recommendations on potential funding sources. Oh, no, that's.
Explore innovative
Which
financing
amendment
opportunities.
are you looking at, Regina? I'm sorry, I'm not, I'm just,
935.
Yeah,
okay, on what page?
hold on,
I think it's page 3, line 24.
you're right, line 3, page 3, line 24.
And line 27, explore innovative financing opportunities for such as created as the state.
Make recommendations of potential funding
Okay,
sources.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, make recommendations on potential funding sources, including but not limited to avenues of cost recovery for adaptation and resilience expenditures from parties most responsible. How are you going to determine that, and are we going to be putting expenditures on small businesses before, what's the process to see that a business is guilty?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and we could strike most of this. I was trying to acknowledge here that there are several states now and about 18 municipalities that have initiated lawsuits. And some of them have gone into court and have not been dismissed. They are proceeding. I think it's like the early days of the PFAS and the opioid and so on. And it's basically, some place, there's oil companies or other ones. Now, I'd be happy to strike that. but I know it's happening nationally, so I just thought, well, if there comes a time when we want to join one of those suits, like we did with the, with the MBTE or the opioids, that we would, but it's premature, and I thought about cutting it out, so.
Strike
And
out.
I get the,
Yeah,
because we
but,
were subject to the mobile
Right.
lawsuit, but my fear is that some entities might go after lawsuits on some of these small companies, small businesses in the state, so that makes me nervous that they're guilty before they're,
So why don't we cut, how about this, if we make recommendations on potential funding sources to protect New Hampshire taxpayers, so just cut that out.
okay,
You comfortable with that?
yep.
And explore innovative funding, I mean, I think innovative funding is what we're gonna be looking at, and for lots of stuff, because we can't pay for all this.
No, and I know that, and
Okay, Bill,
it needs to be tightened up there too, just
Yeah,
no bad actors coming in too.
yeah.
so are we settled on?
Do you want to do this as a committee amendment, or?
No,
you
no,
wanna just
I'll
work on
keep,
this
let's wait till
and
next week, but I'll start, what else would you like me to change?
It's gonna get too
I,
complicated.
those are my biggest issues,
All right.
those are my two.
So I'll
biggest
make sure, I'll work on some language to make sure that, that fund could be just really simple, that there's a fund established and it may receive funds from various sources or something like that. But
No bad
that's helpful, because I, it's funny, you get so close to this language, think through what it might open the door to.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
like a finance committee member.
Especially with the bill that I put in, so I want to make sure that we don't have bad actors coming in.
The only
Yeah,
other,
no
$5.50?
kidding, no kidding.
Did you want to take that up today, or?
I don't know, I'm starting to look like this, honestly. I'm
Senator
sorry.
Waters, can you refresh us?
So what we were, this is the one where the
$5.50.
550.
Dam,
This is the one where the House
no, that's not the dam.
has a bill, and they've passed it. We had kind of waited to make sure they were passing it. And I think it looks pretty good, and it's gonna come over here, and the changes they made to it, I think we're gonna think, yeah, this is the way to go. Chairman Bose and everybody worked on it, and they feel pretty good. And the utilities, the avocado is behind a lot of this language, and that's all good. I think that part of it was just, do we want to keep the Senate bill in play in some ways?
You want to pass it and table it?
Well, what we could do is I could take the House version and bring it in next week, and we could add that as an amendment and pass it and table it. So just in case we'd have the Senate version. Or we could just vote interim study right now.
What do you think is better?
I don't really care at this point. I think you're gonna find the House bill pretty good, and now that they have passed it, which I think is the case, yeah, I checked on that, they did pass it. So, I think why don't I just move,
We can pass it and
why
table
don't
it.
I just move interim study, okay? And that way we can,
Okay,
we can hold it and.
all in favor of interim study?
You get a second?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Aye.
Any opposed?
Consent?
Second?
All in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. Senator Waters would love to take this one up.
And I can update on one or two other things if you wouldn't mind.
Yep.
So, I don't know when you're planning to schedule House Bill 609, the site evaluation bill.
I haven't given it a thought, yeah.
Just an
Anyway.
FYI, the Senate President doesn't want us hearing any House bills until we're done. I have already heard two in Health and Human
Yeah,
Services.
transportation.
Oh, we can hear him.
I got one to fast track, though. I do have one that I need to
Oh,
fast
okay.
track.
He's okay with us hearing him, he just doesn't want us to accept.
Well, whatever,
Well, he hasn't
whatever.
assigned
Yeah.
many to us, that's
Oh,
why.
I've got 17 already.
I think there's one
I've
coming
already heard
from.
5, I got 5 more to hear tomorrow.
So whenever it comes over, DOE is looking for us to do an amendment to it, and I've had that drafted. And then just actually it relates to some other things that this is a good vehicle for it. And then there was actually what I think is an error about the size of projects that could be used for energy storage. It says like 30 megawatt hours when you want, which is nothing, when you want it to be 30 megawatts. So that's another one that Senator Brown brought to me, and I said, well, you know, check with Bose and McGee, and if everybody agrees that this is the change we should make to it, we will. But I just wanted to say that there's a couple amendments we might see on that, but otherwise, they did a great job.
What's the number?
609, House Bill 609. So that's the second piece of the triad on site evaluation reform.
Okay. So, did we get 458 yet? No, no. Do we have it? Do we have it?
Which is that?
I don't know. I was just told that has a particular interest.
It's a fast track one.
Yeah.
458?
House bill.
The House bill.
I didn't know they had them that low.
No, I didn't think so either. You sure it's not 1458?
Yeah, it's been.
All right, well, we'll hear it next week.
What's the subject of it?
Reestablishing the commission to study the assessing of power generation.
The what?
Assessing of power generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, yes.
Yeah, we'll hear
That'd
that
be
next
good
week.
to get done.
And 609 available.
We'll hear that next week.
Yeah.
So,
So 609 next week?
Bills now?
All right, so.
no, I'll exec the rest of them.
No, we heard them all?
I'm pretty sure we did. We've heard them all.
All the
Senate
Senate
bills?
bills?
There is.
We still
Which one?
have two to hear.
Which one are those?
They're the L-shaped bills.
Okay,
No, mine, so, tail end.
all right,
Why didn't we hear them today?
yeah. We could've- Well, because we didn't know how long the
Yeah.
meeting was.
Ah.
So we'll hear those next week, and then the two House bills.
Good work, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to move out of exec?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. And I seconded it. All right, and we are dismissed.
When we do 609.